Did you know that the secret to transforming a forgettable story into an unforgettable one often boils down to just 3 words? Show, don't tell. It's the difference between telling your readers about a fearsome dragon and making them feel the ground shake with its approaching footsteps. After more than 20 years of fantasy writing, I can tell you that mastering this technique is like finding a magic wand for your writing. And the best part? It's so simple, you will be kicking yourself for not doing it sooner. In this video, I'll reveal why showing is the ultimate weapon of many best-selling fantasy authors and how you can wield it too, the biggest mistakes that keep your readers at arm's length and the dead simple fixes you can apply today, and the secret to writing characters your readers will never forget without any complex character sheets required. But first, let me clear up a common misconception about what show don't tell really means. Trust me, it's not what you think, and understanding this could be the key to unlocking your story's true potential. Many writers believe show don't tell means banishing all exposition or drowning your readers in endless visual details. That's not it at all though. In fact, this approach can turn your epic tale into a tedious slog. At its core, show don't tell is about igniting your readers' emotions and senses. It's about knowing when to paint a vivid picture and when to step back, letting your readers' imagination run wild. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine you're introducing a villain. You could tell the reader he was an evil man. Boring, right? Now consider this instead. He smiled as he stepped over the beggar, purposely grinding his heel into the man's outstretched hand. Feel that? You didn't just read about evil, you experienced it. You might even have winced. That's the power of showing. Now before I expand upon that, let me first walk you through some of the biggest mistakes you want to avoid. Mistake number 1 is over-relying on body language. How many times have you read about characters whose hearts are always pounding or fists are constantly clenching? Trust me, it gets old fast. The fix for that? Use emotional projection. Show your characters' feelings through their perception of the world around them. If they are angry, maybe the sunlight seems harsh and grating. If they're in love, perhaps the world looks brighter, more vibrant. Here's an example. Before, John was angry, his heart raced and his fist clenched. After, the cheerful birdsong grated on John's ears like nails on a chalkboard. Even the gentle breeze felt like it was mocking his pain. Mistake number 2 is the excessive use of adverbs instead of strong verbs. Adverbs can be a crutch that weakens your prose and tells rather than shows. The fix here is to replace adverb-verb combinations with stronger, more specific verbs. For example, before, the wizard cautiously approached the ancient tomb. And after, the wizard crept toward the ancient tomb. Or even better, the wizard inched toward the ancient tomb, his eyes darting between the crackling runes on its cover. Now mistake number 3 then is telling emotions instead of showing their effects. Directly stating a character's emotions can create distance between the reader and the story. Our fix here would be to show the physical and behavioral effects of the emotions. For example, before, Jameer was devastated by the destruction of his village. And then after, Jameer stood amidst the smoldering ruins of his village, his trembling hands clenched into fists. The acid smell of smoke stung his eyes, but he refused to blink away the tears, forcing himself to witness the full extent of the devastation. Moving on to mistake number 4, that's info dumping instead of revealing information through action and dialogue. Long paragraphs of exposition can bore readers and pull them out of the story. The fix for that is to weave necessary information into the narrative through character interactions and experiences. Here's an example for that as well. Before, the kingdom of Etheria had been at war with the Dark Empire for centuries. Their conflict started when etc, etc, etc. After, Jameer's grandmother traced the jagged scar on the old map. This border, she said, her voice heavy with memory, has been soaked in blood since before I was born. Etheria and the Dark Empire have been locked in this dance of death for generations. Now, I know what you're thinking, but my readers need to know the entire 1000-year history of the Elven-Dwarf conflict. And trust me, they don't. At least not all at once. Remember, you're writing a novel, not a history textbook. Effective showing doesn't always mean using more words though. Sometimes fewer words can speed up pacing and create a more intense experience for your reader. Let me show you what I mean with an example. Here's a longer version. The wizard's eyes blazed white-hot as he uttered the final syllable. The air crackled with energy, and with a thunderous roar, the enemy's obsidian fortress crumbled. Massive chunks of black stone crashed to the ground, kicking up clouds of dust. The wizard swayed, his face ashen, leaning heavily on his staff. And this is the concise version of the same example. Eyes aflame, the wizard spoke. The obsidian fortress shattered like glass, leaving him behind crumpled, his staff being the only support. Both versions effectively show the scene, but they serve different purposes. The longer version is perfect for a pivotal moment in your story, where you want your readers to slow down and savor every detail. It's immersive and rich, allowing readers to fully visualize and experience the moment. The concise version, on the other hand, is ideal for maintaining a fast pace, or during action sequences, where you want to keep your readers on the edge of their seats. It delivers the key points, the wizard's power, the destruction, and his exhaustion in a quick punchy manner that mirrors the suddenness of the action. This concept of strategic showing is crucial for maintaining pace. You don't need to show everything, just the most impactful moments. For action scenes, focus on sharp, vivid details that propel the story forward. Instead of describing every swing of a sword, you might write, "Steel flashed, blood sprayed, and eventually, Kieran's opponent crumbled." By choosing when to use more detailed showing and when to use concise showing, you can control the rhythm of your story. Remember though that showing isn't always the right choice. Sometimes it's about knowing when to pull back. For instance, instead of describing every moment of a character's day, you might write, "The weeks blurred together, each day indistinguishable from the last." This telling sentence actually presents the character's mental state more effectively than any detailed and likely boring account ever could. But showing isn't limited to action or scene setting either. It's equally powerful for introspection. Instead of telling readers, "Kieran felt guilty," you might write, "The weight of the stolen coin seemed to burn a hole in Kieran's pocket. He couldn't meet his mother's eyes as she praised his honesty." This balance between external action and internal reflection is what gives your story depth and makes your characters feel real. As you practice these techniques, you'll develop an instinct for when to show and when to tell. It's not about following rigid rules, it's about using the right tool at the right time to bring your fantasy world to life. Now, if you found anything useful in the video so far, please consider giving it a like to help me grow the channel. Thank you. After sharing the basics of Show Don't Tell, let me walk you through some examples from 3 popular fantasy authors. First up, J.K. Rowling. In her debut novel, Rowling introduces readers to a hidden magical world. Instead of simply describing this world as wondrous, she shows it through the eyes of her protagonist, a boy who's encountering it for the very first time. Harry wished he had about 8 more eyes. He turned his head in every direction as I walked up the street, trying to look at everything at once. The shops, the things outside them, the people doing their shopping. Rowling doesn't just tell us this scene is magical and overwhelming. She shows us through Harry's actions and reactions. We feel his wonder and excitement as he tries to take in everything at once. This technique pulls readers into the world, making them feel as if they are discovering it alongside Harry. Next, let's examine Patrick Rothfuss's work. In his debut novel, Rothfuss masterfully shows complex emotions without directly naming them. I was numb and full of nothing. The nothing came from inside me and spread to fill the entire world. I felt it in the deepening shadows and the cooling air. I tasted it in the ash and copper of my mouth. Here, Rothfuss is showing a character in a state of deep shock or grief. Instead of plainly stating the emotion, he describes how it feels and how it affects the character's perception of the world. The emptiness, the taste of ash and copper, these vivid details make the emotion tangible for the reader. Lastly, let's look at George R.R. Martin's technique. Martin is known for his complex characters, which he often reveals through actions rather than descriptions. "The things I do for love," he said with loathing. He gave Bran a shove. In this scene, Martin shows us Jaime Lannister pushing a child from a tower. The action itself is shocking, but it's the dialogue that truly reveals Jaime's character. "The things I do for love" suggests that this isn't a random act of cruelty, but something Jaime feels compelled to do out of love or obsession for someone else. The loathing in his voice shows he's not entirely comfortable with his actions. In just 2 sentences, Martin has given us a complex, morally ambiguous character without explicitly telling us anything about him. Now, I hope these examples from best-selling authors have inspired you to experiment with your own showing techniques. But I know that mastering this skill takes practice and ongoing guidance. That's why I've created a free weekly newsletter packed with bite-sized, actionable advice to help you continue improving your fantasy writing in just 5 minutes a week. So if you're interested in leveling up your writing even further, the link to sign up is in the description below. Moving on, let me explain how you can apply these showing techniques across different narrative perspectives. The viewpoint you choose can dramatically affect how you show your story to your readers. First, let's dive into the first-person perspective. Here, you're not just telling the story, you're living it through your character's eyes. This intimate viewpoint offers unique opportunities for showing. In first person, you're inside your character's head. Use this closeness to show their thoughts and feelings directly. Instead of saying I was nervous, try my palms grew slick on the wand's grip, and the incantation I'd practiced 100 times suddenly felt foreign on my tongue. This perspective allows you to show the world filtered through your character's perceptions. A crowded marketplace isn't just busy, it's overwhelming. The scents, sounds, and sights bombard your character and through them your reader. But be careful, first-person showing requires a delicate balance. You can't show what your character doesn't see or know. Use this limitation to create suspense or to show your character's biases and blind spots. Now let's move on to the third-person perspective. This viewpoint allows for a bit more distance, but don't let that fool you, it's still a powerful tool for showing. In third person, focus on showing through actions and subtle cues. Rather than she was angry, instead write Sarah's jaw clenched as she stared at the broken amulet, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. This perspective gives you more flexibility. You can zoom in close to show a character's inner thoughts, or pull back to show broader actions and reactions. Use this range to vary your showing techniques and control the pacing of your story. Third person also allows you to show different characters' perspectives within the same scene. This can be particularly useful in fantasy writing, where you might want to show how different characters perceive magical elements or fantastical creatures. Lastly, let's explore the omniscient narrator perspective. This viewpoint gives you the most freedom, but it also comes with its own challenges. With an omniscient narrator, you have the ability to show from multiple viewpoints. Use this to create dramatic irony or to contrast characters' perceptions. For example, as the elf and dwarf shook hands, neither noticed how the other winced at the other's grip, each believing their own kind superior in strength. The omniscient perspective allows you to show your readers things that your characters don't know. You can reveal the grand scope of your fantasy world or provide insights into multiple characters' motivations and feelings. However, be cautious. With great power comes great responsibility. It's easy to fall into telling rather than showing when you have access to all information. Focus on showing through specific details and actions rather than broad statements. Remember, regardless of the perspective you choose, the key to effective showing is to immerse your reader in the experience of your story. Now, you've likely heard about character sheets. Those detailed lists of traits, backgrounds, and quirks that writers often create before diving into a story. As a passionate plotter with huge outlines, I'm certainly not going to argue against this. But what if I told you that mastering the art of showing could make you reconsider how to use all this information? Instead of relying on a pre-written list of traits that you dump on the reader, let's explore how to reveal your characters organically through your story. This approach not only creates more dynamic characters, but also engages your readers more deeply. First, let's talk about revealing character traits. Rather than stating that your protagonist is brave, show it through their actions in a crisis. For example, Jarmia's hands shook as he approached the dragon's lair, but he didn't turn back. With each step, the scorching heat intensified, singeing his eyebrows. Still, he pressed on. This snippet shows Jarmia's bravery without ever using the word. It also reveals his determination and perhaps a hint of fear, adding depth to his character. Now, dialogue is another powerful tool for character revelation. Consider this exchange. "We can't just leave them behind," Remo insisted. "We don't have a choice," Mira replied, her voice flat. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." "Since when did you become so cold?" Remo spat. Mira's eyes flashed. "Since I became responsible for an entire kingdom." This brief conversation reveals volumes about both characters' values, their relationship, and the pressures they're under. Now, from here, let's tackle character growth. This is where showing truly shines. Instead of telling readers that a character has changed, demonstrate it through their altered reactions to similar situations. For instance, early in the story, Finn huddled in the shadows, watching the guards pass by. His heart raced. He couldn't risk being caught again. Then later in the story, Finn strode past the guards, nodding confidently. His newly earned insignia glinted on his chest. These contrasting scenes show Finn's journey from fugitive to respective figure without spelling it out. But what about a character's background and history? How do we show that without resorting to info dumps? Well, the key here is as well to weave it in naturally into the narrative. For example, Jarmia traced the scar on his palm, a habit he'd developed over the years. It tingled, as it always did when magic was near, a permanent reminder of the price he'd paid for his training. This brief moment hints at Jarmia's past as a magic user and suggests a difficult training experience, all without breaking the flow of the narrative. By using these showing techniques, you create characters that feel real and three-dimensional. Your readers will get to know them gradually, just as they would a real person, making for a more engaging and immersive reading experience. In order to fully master the art of showing though, you need to understand one key ingredient. Check out my video on subtext and take your writing and showing skills to the next level.